Welcome to the Deep Dive. Really glad you could join us today, especially our Go Trader listeners. We're diving into something I think is, it's pretty critical in any high-stakes field, but especially entrepreneurship or trading. We're going right at one of the biggest myths out there.
Yeah, that myth is all about courage, isn't it? This idea that, success is just one massive leap of faith, coupled with sheer grit and burning the midnight oil until you basically collapse.
Exactly. And our mission today is to kind of push back on that hard. We want to give you a sort of mental shortcut, really, to understand what actually works long-term, what separates the people who are good at starting from the ones who really master continuing. Because it turns out the real driver isn't the drama. It's quieter, more consistent.
It's a really necessary shift in mindset, I think, particularly where consistency, risk management, those are paramount. You need to look past the big flashy start and really focus on the often invisible engine of just systematically refusing to quit.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because culturally, we totally celebrate the launch, right? That first brave step, the founder risking it all. We see that sheer bravery as the key. But the insights we've been looking at suggest bravery. Well, it's not a stable resource.
No, it's volatile, highly volatile. And that's the beginner's trap, isn't it? It's a really simple confusion, but costly, mistaking intensity for actual effectiveness. So when someone jumps into a new venture, maybe a business, maybe learning a complex system, their first idea of success is all about spectacular effort. It's not about systemic results yet.
Right. Let's maybe detail those specific behaviors, the ones people think mean success at the start. Because these are kind of the warning signs, the indicators you're running on courage alone. What does that beginner mindset push you to do?
Well, it's the gospel of self-sacrifice, basically. You believe you have to work until 3 a.m. You see the sheer number of hours as proof of value. You're constantly pushing your limits physically, mentally. And crucially, you frame it all as this lonely battle, fighting alone. The measure of success becomes how miserable you are. Look how exhausted I am. I must be doing it right.
That 3 a.m. thing it's fascinating because it's almost never about creating something proactively, is it? It feels more like you're reacting, firefighting. It suggests the system kind of broke down hours ago and now you're paying the price with sleep.
That's exactly the flaw in the system.
Yeah.
These late-night heroics, they're unsustainable bursts. They prioritize the story, the drama you can tell later over the actual substance. If you're always working till 3 a.m., that's not grit. It's usually proof of, organizational debt.
Organizational debt. That's a good term. Can you unpack that a little more?
Sure. Organizational debt. It builds up when you keep choosing the quick fix, the easy patch now, instead of investing time to build a solid, disciplined system that stops the problem from happening again and again. Working till 3 a.m., that's you paying the really high interest on that debt in these exhausting bursts. A disciplined operator knows that putting in the time up front for structure, the boring stuff, it's way cheaper than constantly managing crises.
So that big, energetic start, that courageous jump, it doesn't solve the real long-term issue. It just gives you enough, maybe psychological momentum to ignore the underlying problem for another week or so.
Correct. And this ties right into the main emotional hurdle. The beginner thinks success is just about managing the emotional roller coaster, the highs and lows. So all their effort goes into staying motivated when things are down or trying not to get too carried away after a win. They're burning all this mental energy just trying to stabilize their own feelings instead of building the business or refining the actual system.
That sounds incredibly relevant for, say, trading. If you're relying on a high from a big win to keep you going, then the inevitable downswing, a tough market, it's going to completely wreck your strategy, right?
Yeah.
Your motivation becomes totally dependent on outside results you can't even control.
Precisely. They're putting in huge, exhausting effort just to prop up a shaky reactive structure. The focus is all wrong. It's on emotional firefighting, not on discipline protocols. Courage gets you off the starting blocks, gives you that initial buzz, but relying on those emotions, that leads to terrible decision fatigue, volatility. It's a recipe for disaster long term. We really need to rethink what success actually looks like. And spoiler alert, it's probably a lot less dramatic than people think.
Okay, this is where it starts to get really interesting for me. Because the experience, the wisdom from people who do sustain success long term, it paints a completely opposite picture. It's the total reverse of that courageous, adrenaline-fueled launch.
Yeah, we're talking about monotony. And we need to kind of embrace that word, see it as a strength, almost a superpower. The big realization is that real lasting success comes down to showing the same discipline repeatedly every single day. So if the beginner is on that emotional roller coaster, the veteran. They're on a high-speed train, perfectly level track, just moving forward with this, like, unnerving consistency.
That really strips away the glamour, doesn't it? It suggests the work itself doesn't change just because you feel excited or down or the market's crazy or something personal happened yesterday.
Exactly. It creates this almost mechanical detachment from emotion, but it's a deliberate choice. And this daily commitment, it needs constant conscious clarity. The discipline involves redefining or at least strongly reaffirming your core mission every single day. And that's not just like a motivational poster thing. It's a necessary strategic move. It defends against systemic drift.
Systemic drift. Okay.
Yeah.
How does that daily check-in prevent that drift?
Well, systemic drift happens when all the small, non-essential tasks, the emails, the meetings, the stuff that feels urgent, they just slowly eat up all the time. That should be for the actual high-value core work. You drift from being, say, a builder or a creator into just managing noise. So by redefining that core mission daily, you force the question, does this thing I'm about to do right now directly help the one thing that really matters?
Yeah.
You have to proceed with the same determination consistently, which means you do the necessary, unglamorous process stuff whether you feel inspired or completely drained.
Can you give us a practical example? Like, what does this monotonous discipline actually look like day to day in a structured setting? It can't just be about grinding harder, right? It's got to be smarter, more consistent.
Okay, think about something like a structured shutdown protocol. A beginner often finishes their day by just crashing at 3 a.m., totally exhausted. A disciplined expert, though, regardless of how tired they are, they enforce, say, a mandatory 30-minute structured shutdown. It's a ritual, it's monotonous. Clear the desk, review the top 3 critical inputs needed for tomorrow morning, finalize the one absolute non-negotiable step for the next day, and this is key, calculate the current state of risk or resources.
That shutdown idea is powerful because it sounds like it preemptively tackles decision fatigue for the next morning. You don't have to rely on feeling motivated when you wake up. You just execute the plan your disciplined self already laid out.
Exactly. Discipline is basically the system you build to protect yourself from your future, possibly weaker self. The key to continuing is making the right choices easy and the wrong choices hard. The goal shifts, you know. You try to build a process where doing the work itself becomes satisfying, regardless of the immediate reward.
Which brings us to maybe the biggest challenge with this whole approach, the lack of outside praise. We live in a world that runs on instant feedback, likes, applause. How do you possibly cultivate the discipline to keep walking that path without any applause?
This is the deepest link between discipline and true intrinsic motivation. If your internal reward system needs that external validation, likes, peer praise, huge immediate returns, you're basically setting yourself up for failure. Why? Because the most critical work, the infrastructure building, think boring accounting, necessary compliance checks, detailed process documentation is completely invisible. Nobody stands up and cheers because you successfully maintained a complex system.
Yeah, it's tough to drag yourself out of bed to do that necessary dull system update if you know there's zero fanfare and maybe no visible payoff for months or even longer.
So you have to learn to get satisfaction from doing the process correctly, not just from the outcome. The reward shifts. It's not the visible skyscraper anymore. It's the invisible integrity of the foundation you're building. If you can consistently nail those vital, repetitive tasks without needing anyone to clap, then you've achieved a level of self-mastery. That's the difference, really. Performing for an audience, that's courage. Performing for the integrity of the system itself, that's discipline.
Okay, so we shift the goal. It's not about being brave enough to start the big show anymore. It's about being disciplined enough to manage and maintain the underlying structure until it delivers those long-term results.
Right, so the critical turning point in any successful long-term venture seems to be when the whole thing stops feeling like an external battle, you know, against the market or competitors.
Yeah.
And it becomes this internal transformation, a fight for self-mastery, for systems thinking. Yeah, looking back, the hard-won wisdom you hear again and again, it consistently shows the core process wasn't really about courage in the long run. It was about learning to become one's own leader. That jump from being the hands-on technician to being your own internal CEO, that's the toughest lesson.
We often start out as the technician, don't we? The person who can actually do the thing, write the code, make the trade, build the product. But what exactly defines that shift? What does being your own internal CEO actually demand?
Well, it demands accountability without anyone looking over your shoulder. The self-leader is the one who schedules the unpleasant but necessary stuff, not just the fun, creative tasks. They're the ones enforcing boundaries, especially protecting deep work time from all the administrative chatter. And critically, they make the hard choices about resources, especially their own limited time and mental energy.
That's the ultimate paradox of the whole entrepreneur myth, isn't it? We think they're rebels rejecting hierarchy, but actually, the successful ones install the strictest, most strategic boss they've ever had, right inside their own head.
Precisely. And the most strategic job of that internal CEO, it's fighting the most destructive habit the beginner has. The myth of simultaneous action. This is the hard, cold truth. You cannot do everything at the same time, period.
Oof. That cuts right against the whole hustle culture idea, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The belief that you have to be juggling 100 things at once to feel productive. That 3 a.m. mentality is built on this flawed idea that just putting in more effort means more output, regardless of where that effort goes.
Yeah, that juggling act. It's just burnout pretending to be ambition. In any complex field, especially involving financial risk or detailed systems, focus dictates results. Singularity of focus. If you try to handle marketing and optimize the supply chain and do the detailed financial audit and design the next product all at once, you'll do all of them poorly and rack up huge organizational debt.
So self-leadership means learning to prioritize ruthlessly, which means saying no to a ton of things, even good opportunities or necessary tasks, just because they don't fit the absolute core focus right now.
It demands being okay with letting maybe 90% of potentially good ideas or opportunities just drift by, so you can absolutely nail the top 10%. That's terrifying for a beginner who has that fear of missing out, but the self-leader understands. Spread your energy too thin, you get nothing. Focus it, you get exponential results eventually.
But isn't that really hard emotionally, especially for someone who gets energy from starting new things? How do you manage the guilt, the anxiety of consciously letting 90% of things slide?
You manage it by changing your internal scorecard. You stop measuring success by how many things you started. And you start measuring it by the quality and consistency of the one thing you're focused on right now, the process integrity. The solution is really embracing the power of incrementalism. It's a counterintuitive approach, but it leads to radical change.
Incrementalism. It just sounds slow, which feels like failing in today's world, doesn't it?
Well, the saying goes, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, especially with complex systems. Real, lasting change comes from those consistent, small efforts. The source material nails this. If you take one step every single day, eventually you change things.
We're so conditioned to look for the big bang, the explosive breakthrough moment we tie to courage. But the real breakthrough is actually just the sum total of thousands of tiny daily steps, the boring ones nobody even noticed.
Absolutely. That daily step shifts your focus. It moves it away from the outcome, which is often big, far away, and loaded with emotion, and it brings it back to the process, which is small, immediate, and totally manageable. You don't need some massive act of bravery to take one small focused step today. You just need the discipline to pick that one step over the 10 shiny distractions. This incremental approach, it's the mechanism that prevents you from getting overwhelmed and helps you stay clear.
Yeah, the person trying to leap the canyon, relying on courage, they often fall short. The person who just systematically builds the bridge one plank at a time using discipline, they always get across. Okay, so we've traced this path from that initial explosive courage to quiet discipline, and then through that hard internal work of self-leadership. Now we land at the culmination, sustained, deliberate, effective action, the art of continuation.
This is it. The ultimate insight really earned the hard way. We have to internalize this mantra. Starting is not important. Continuing is the art.
Starting feels easy sometimes, doesn't it? Low cost, high excitement, anyone can do it almost. Needs a bit of motivation, maybe a credit card, but continuing. That requires a whole different mature skill set. Patience, sticking to systems, resilience against boredom, managing resources carefully.
And if you just look at why so many new ventures fail, this is the key difference, right? Most don't fail because they lack that initial spark of courage. They fail precisely because they hadn't mastered the art of continuation, especially when things got tough, or maybe even more commonly when things just got boring, utterly mundane. Passion projects often die when they hit the wall of tedious administrative reality.
Oh, mundane tasks are the real passion killers.
Yeah.
The second the excitement fades and the entrepreneur faces like regulatory paperwork or standardized customer service responses or routine system maintenance, the courage-driven person realizes, Whoa, I didn't sign up for this level of unglamorous grind.
Right. Courage gets you through week one, maybe month one. Discipline, the art of continuation, that's what gets you through the next 5 years of paperwork, slow growth that isn't linear, market ups and downs, and just operational monotony.
Let's tie this back directly to our listeners, especially in the Go Trade Go community. How does this art of continuation show up in a high-stakes environment like trading, where your results are staring you in the face every day?
In high stakes fields, continuation basically means protocol adherence, sticking to the plan. So, a courageous beginner might take a huge impulsive trade, high leverage, based on a gut feeling, maybe some market hype. That's their version of the 3 a.m. work burst. But the disciplined master of continuation, they consistently stick to their predefined stop losses, their risk management rules, their daily portfolio review process, and they do it regardless of whether the market feels euphoric or totally panicked.
So continuing isn't just about showing up day after day. It's about showing up and actually doing the system. Implementing the plan you made when you were calm and rational, even when your current emotions are screaming at you to do something different.
Exactly right. The art of continuation means showing up when you're tired, when you're bored, and critically, when you've just taken a hit, a demoralizing loss. In trading, the disciplined continuer looks at that loss not as a personal failure, but as a data point. Maybe it needs a tiny tweak to the system. And then they continue trading according to the established rules. The beginner, they spiral, they feel the need to win it back, throw the rules out the window in this desperate, courageous gamble to fix the deficit immediately.
That shift in perspective, it's huge. It changes the whole purpose of the journey. The journey isn't just about hitting the final goal, the money, the business success. It's about becoming the kind of person who can actually endure and master the process needed to get there.
And that transformation, learning the self-leadership, mastering continuation through those daily discipline steps, that's the real win. That's the success that market swings can't take away from you. It becomes your inherent ability to perform consistently.
So we need to move away from idolizing the flashy, courageous starter who runs out and develop this quiet, deep respect for the disciplined, effective continuer, the one who's still there years later. Hashtag tag outro, host, speaker, and expert speaker.
So just to kind of wrap up the core idea from this deep dive, real sustainable success. It flows from discipline, from daily repetition, from consistently applying your process, not from those big adrenaline-fueled acts of courage. The single biggest takeaway for you, the listener, might be realizing that your ability to focus, to commit to that one step daily, instead of trying to juggle everything that's your most precious, non-renewable resource, manage it well.
Yeah, think about that internal switch. The high performer realizes they have to stop being the technician running on fumes and courage and start being the internal CEO, fueled by optimizing the system.
And we want to leave you with something to reflect on, building on this idea of lessons learned the hard way. Think about your own journey, business, finance, maybe a personal goal you're mastering. What's the single toughest lesson about perseverance, or maybe just sheer discipline, that you personally had to learn through experience?
Yeah, think about that moment when you were forced to stop trying to do everything all at once. The moment you truly committed to just implementing that boring, maybe unglamorous, but effective one step daily. That realization, that's often the genuine turning point, isn't it? The shift from just high-risk ambition to truly sustainable achievement.
That internal commitment to the daily, sometimes boring but always effective step, that's where the real art is. That's what ensures you continue.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into what really drives sustained success. We hope this gives you a clearer roadmap for the disciplined path ahead.
Until next time, keep taking that single consistent step.